When I became a mother, I kind of started to let myself go.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about, the weight gain and the yoga pants every day and the makeup free look, but I did do all those things. But what I'm really referring to is I just slowly began to let go of everything in my life that made me who I was, my interests, my activities, and even my friendships over the course of 15 years or so became very superficial. I wasn't living my life alongside any friends anymore. It was just my family. And when my family dynamic look, I could see on the horizon, everything in my life and my world was going to be changing. And my kids were going to be launching into their next stuff. And that was so exciting. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what about me?
Hello, and welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser, and this week my guest is Brenda Ridgley. She's a certified midlife women's life coach, author, speaker, and a girlfriend guru who loves helping women connect, find success, and discover joy through friendship. Her mission is to support women who have lost themselves in their roles as a wife, mother, and professional, and help them connect to their own passions, purpose, and people. She holds a master's degree in human resources and has spent decades cultivating her own tribe. Everybody, please welcome Brenda. Brenda, I'm so happy to have you on the show. So let's talk about your fearless female journey. Where did this all begin?
Oh, thanks, Paola. I'm so happy to be on your show. And I just love this topic because it really is the beginning of everything great going on in my life right now and how it's evolved into what is becoming my legacy.
Oh.
So, you just want me to start with how my
Start
fearless...
from the beginning. Before you discovered this, like what made you get to this point?
Okay, so I'm going to make the first part long story shortish, but I think like most women, we kind of grow up with some dreams and some boxes that we think we're going to check. We're going to, graduate high school, go to college maybe and graduate, maybe find a partner, maybe get married, have kids, and you get to a point in your life and you're like, check, 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 check. I did it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here I am in midlife still. And, what's next for me? Like many women, when I became a mother, I kind of started to let myself go.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about, the weight gain and the yoga pants every day and the makeup free look, but I did do all those things. But what I'm really referring to is I just slowly began to let go of everything in my life that made me who I was, my interests, my activities, and even my friendships over the course of 15 years or so became very superficial. I wasn't living my life alongside any friends anymore. It was just my family. And when my family dynamic look, I could see on the horizon, everything in my life and my world was going to be changing. And my kids were going to be launching into their next stuff. And that was so exciting. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what about me? Who
Yeah.
am I now when I'm not going to be a mom, really? I mean, of course, we're always going to be a mom, but
They don't need you as much anymore.
they don't need me as much. And I had literally dropped almost everything else that I had to build these humans into successful, productive citizens that contribute and make a difference, right? And
Yes.
then I'm just left, I felt empty.
Mm.
And Paola, I just kind of meandered in this state of what I call my midlife funk for more than 2 years. Literally just kind of waking up in the morning, not wanting to get out of bed and asking the universe for help. Where is my inspiration? Where's the joy? I want to be excited about my life again. What is it? Help me find the way. And I just was stuck.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of women at some point in their life where they find themselves stuck. Have you ever found yourself stuck in
Yes.
like transition?
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack in this conversation. And honestly, like when you think about midlife, you don't think yourself as a midlife person. Like I'm about to turn 44 in January, and I don't feel like I'm midlife. Like I still look at myself in the mirror and I think I'm in my 20s. Like,
Yeah, yeah, right.
right. But I just recently went to Vegas and I definitely feel like I'm in my midlife because I used to go to Vegas and I used to party and dance and have a great time when I was single. And I was out till 4 in the morning at the clubs and hanging out with my friends and having alcohol and all this stuff. And now, like, I was back in the hotel room at 10:30 p.m. and I was excited to be in my comfy pajamas and my cozy socks. And, it's such a different change of life. But I also was contemplating this question that someone asked me was, why didn't you choose to have children? And my husband and I, we got married. He already had 2 kids prior from a previous marriage. And honestly, like when we found out we couldn't have children, I was bummed, but I wasn't too bummed because I loved my life the way it was. And
Yeah.
having children and in becoming a stepmom when my stepson was 8 and my other stepson was 13, like it was a lot of work. We only had them 20% of the time, but in that 20%, we were their full-time concierge. And
Mhm.
the thing is that like, yes, I love my stepsons. I'm thankful now they're at 16 and 20 and I don't have to be their full-time concierge.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we did go through that phase, my husband and I, where, now my stepson's 16 and he doesn't want to have the pool party in the backyard and he wants to be at the beach with his friends. Or, we used to have a home up in Kingsburg, was right on the river. And we would, every summer we were there with the kids, every holiday, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, all the events, 4th of July. Now they want to be with their friends. They have their own trucks, they have their own cars, they want to be with their girlfriends, they want to do their own thing. And you do come to this point where, every year your whole life was planned. Like, this is what we're doing for the holidays. This is what we're doing for Easter, for the summer. We're going on vacation with the boys. And then all of a sudden, nobody really prepares you for that moment in time where they don't need you anymore. And they've created their own life with their own friends and they have their own meaning of transportation and their own money because they have jobs. And then you're just
Mhm.
kind of like stuck like, well, what do I do now? And I only had them 20% of the time. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine being a full-time parent where you're just like, well, what do I do now? What
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? And also like going back to being midlife is definitely 40s. Because if we get to live until we're 80, we're in midlife, and for me, like you said, you've checked the boxes. You went to college, you got
Yeah.
the degree, you got the job, you got the husband, you got the children, you got the house. Now what? And
Now what?
and you do definitely kind of lose yourself. Even though like I didn't have children of my own, I did lose myself in that,
Mhm.
now I'm my husband's wife. Now I'm my
Yep.
stepson's stepmother. Now I'm, the hockey mom. Now I'm the homemaker. And you kind of do lose a little bit of who you are and what you love, which is the reason why I started this podcast, because I was tired of having those superficial conversations with other moms about the weather and sports and where did you get your bag or who does your hair. I wanted to have deep conversations. So yes, like I have been stuck, and I thank God that I like hired a life coach and they helped me figure it
Yeah.
out, because sometimes you
Yeah.
do need an outside perspective to give you that guidance, to remind you what is it that makes your soul light up.
Right. Absolutely. And this works for women who are professional women also who don't ever have children, or even maybe they don't even get married. They go all in to their career to the exclusion of their other personal relationships, to their interests and all that stuff. I mean, how many women do you know who work literally from dawn until dusk and just do it over and over again? And first thing in the morning it's emails or whatever, and they're taking text late at night. I mean, I personally know a lot of them. So it's not exclusive to mothers or wives. It's really just all many women experience this. And I love your midlife contemplation, because I totally agree with you. I mean, um, I'm hoping and planning to live beyond 100, so I'm right at midlife. if you talk, but I do not think that midlife is a number.
Yeah.
Midlife is kind of a wisdom. Midlife is an experience level. You've lived some life, but I also think that midlife is our true launching pad for legacy.
Yes, I do believe that because now you have all this wisdom and knowledge that you didn't. I mean, if I think about myself when I was in my 20s, especially now that I got back from Vegas and I'm like, God, all that time I spent worrying and dating toxic men and having shitty jobs and like spending my money drinking because I didn't want to like really sit with my emotions and my trauma and my pain. Like I masked so much of who I was because I was trying so hard to fit in. And I feel like when you're in your 40s and 50s, you're finally at that point in life where you're like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me. I don't care
Yeah,
if they make fun of me because I want to take up ballroom dancing or because I want to play the
yeah,
piano or because I want to sing even though I don't have a good voice. Like you're almost at the point where like I don't care what you think of me and you finally get to be like comfortable in your own skin.
yeah. It really is a wonderful peace that comes upon you. And for me, I mean, just kind of going back to my story, is that I came to this, I had this aha moment one day when I was speaking with a friend who was a little older than me. She was already an empty nester.
Mhm.
And, you know, she was, I would call a friend acquaintance. You know, I liked her a lot, but I really didn't know her much beyond what's the weather, like you're saying, you know, what's going on? What are you doing this weekend? And one day I just asked her, I said, Jane, are you really okay? And she
Mm.
said, what are you talking about? And I go, well, you know, she's an empty nester, like I was about to be, and she looked like she was great. She looked like she was having fun, but I couldn't tell if she was faking it like I felt like I was all the time, you know,
Mhm.
faking it till I make it. And she said, oh my gosh, I am not just okay, I am free. I get to do what I want when I want. And she was talking about all the traveling she was doing and all the activities she was doing. And my mind just kind of started exploding here, all these things that I had not done in decades and kind of wanted to. I was invited on vacations I couldn't go on because of the kids. There's this, that, and the other that everything had been funneled into this one entertainment center, and it was called my kids.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And I had for the first time this little bit of hope. And I made a get to list. I started just writing down the things that I was going to get to do now that I was going to be an empty nester, instead of
Yeah.
focusing on all the stuff I would be missing, which I had been just wallowing in really for years.
Yes.
And what it came down to for me, and I think a lot of people, is that the key element of what I was missing was real relationships with other women who really knew me, you know, who was living their life beside me. They knew the great highlights that I'm posting on Facebook and social media, but they also knew the reality of my life, that my struggles, my fears, my failures. Until we're seen at this whole spectrum of authenticity, we feel like an imposter throwing out
Mm.
all the good stuff and trying to keep up with the Joneses. And I had existed in that realm for probably 10 years and not completely lost touch with friends, because we still, you know, followed each other, but I didn't know what was going on in their life either.
Yeah.
So I didn't know where I fit in.
There's seriously like I resonate with this conversation so much because you do kind of get to that place where you're just like, I'm tired of the fake friendships. I want to be with people that really, really know me and care about me and have seen me through all areas of my life and still want to be a part of my journey. And I love that you said like that she said, I'm free. I think about that because this lady had asked me in Vegas, like, Are you sad that you didn't have any kids, with Travis?" And I got married late in life. I was 35, 36, 37 when we started dating at 35. I didn't get married till 37. And when we were told we couldn't have kids, I did go through the grieving process. But I also
Mm.
thought, God gave me these two beautiful stepsons who are so sweet and so kind. And I also have a lot of nieces who have a lot of their own babies. So whenever I get that itch, I just call them up and I'm like, can I babysit? And I get to have that little baby time and the 2-year-old time and the 4-year-old time, and that's awesome, but I also get to give them back. And then I get to go
Yeah.
home and I get to watch my shows. I don't have to watch, Bluey or whatever Disney show over and over on repeat. I get to go to the spa. I get to do my nails. I get to get blowouts for my hair. And when she asked me this question in Vegas, like that day, my stepson had to go with his mom for Thanksgiving. And my husband and we went to a really expensive restaurant. I went shopping and got myself a really nice dress, brand new boots. We
Mm.
came back when my feet were hurting after a really big meal. I got to put my pajamas on, go down to the casino. We played craps. I won money. I had cocktails. And I was thinking, if in the morning when I woke up, because I was still contemplating this lady's question, I was like, if I would have had a 7 or an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old at this time, I would not have been able to have a nice seafood tower. I would have had to have chicken fingers or, something that the kid would like, pizza or something for Thanksgiving, because we're in Vegas. And I was like, I wouldn't have been able to go to the casino. I wouldn't have been able to buy myself a nice dress or shoes because I would have been thinking, and moms do this all the time. Oh, I can't buy myself anything
Mhm.
because the boy needs, braces, or he needs to pay for his baseball tournament fees or whatever. You're so, giving to your child that you forget about yourself. And I was like, I probably would have been bloated, or I probably would have been this, and I was like picturing who I would have been if I would have been a 6-year-old mom or a 7-year-old mom. And I'm like, I'm actually thankful that I didn't get pregnant and didn't have a baby. I love the life that I have now. And
Yeah.
even going further, I saw this funny meme where this lady, I don't even know if she's an actress or a model, but they posted it all over social media that this older, model, beautiful actress was like, I never want to get remarried because I don't want to deal with another man snoring or breathing, in the middle of the night. And I kind of chuckled because my husband recently had a heart attack in August. And, we have these conversations like, what would you have done if I would have died? Would you have ever remarried? No. And he's like, what do you mean? No. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with another set of in-laws, another set
Mm.
of, family dynamics, an ex-baby mama. I don't want to deal with like their, whatever that man comes with, it's not just their family, but like their own trauma, their own pain, maybe something that they didn't work out. Like, I'm going to be happy being single. And that was one thing that I didn't really appreciate before I got married, because like I said, I didn't get married till I was 35. So I didn't appreciate my singleness, because I
Yeah.
think as women, we're taught like our mission is to find a husband and get married. And especially in my culture, once I passed the age of 26, my mom was like, you're going to be a spinster for the rest of your life. And it was just like this condemnation, like, oh my God, you're not married. You don't have a boyfriend. You don't have children. It was like, but I lived a great life. Like, when my friends called me and wanted to go to Vegas, I went. When my friends said, hey, we're going to Miami, I went. When my friends were like, hey,
Yep.
let's go to a movie or let's go to dinner, I was like, sure, let me throw on some heels and go down there. And I didn't really appreciate your freedom that you have when you're single. I was so worried that I needed to get married and I needed to have, like you said, you're checking the boxes, you're checking the
Mhm.
boxes. And I think we're now finally coming and even women are now saying all over social media that they don't want to have children. And you should be okay with that, because there are many women out there that had children that really aren't great mothers and they're only doing it because they're checking the boxes, or
Right.
they're getting married because they think that's what they're supposed to do, and they're checking the boxes, and now they're stuck in this like toxic, unloving marriage. Like, one of the things that I remember when I was single, someone told me, they said, it's better to be alone and happy than to be together
Yeah.
and miserable. And I really, really always
Absolutely.
thought about that when I was looking for a partner, when I was when I was dating men, and I was like, and I was thinking like, I don't think I could be with this guy for 10, 15, 20
Mhm.
years. That's a lot of work. So yes,
Yeah.
it's like you finally really have to ask yourself these questions, because if you've gotten to this midlife point and you are still unhappy and you still haven't discovered all the things that make your soul sing, all the things that light you up, if you haven't done it because you have put yourself in the back burner for your husband, for your career, for your
Mhm.
children. Like, when is the time to actually seek yourself? And it's not selfish. Would you agree? Like,
Self-care is never selfish, but you're right. We absolutely, and we have no problem investing in our family, in our careers, and all these things. But when it comes to investing in ourselves, we feel guilty. And that extends to so many areas of our life. And I kind of internally applauded when I heard you said you got coaching when you hit a spot, because we live our lives and we think when we're adults we should know it all by now, we shouldn't need any more help, but we've had mentors throughout our lives, first our parents and then our teachers, and then maybe a coworker or a boss. And when we get to places where we don't feel whole or like we're moving in the right direction, that's when you need to look for help. It could be a friend or an older friend that's been through it before, or uh, coaches can be great, and they doesn't need to be this year-long program of anything, but just seeking a little bit of advice from someone who has some expertise in that field is just great. So good job doing that.
thank you. I think also people don't want to reach out for help because, like you said, you feel like you should know everything by now. You feel like you're in the midlife, you already graduated from college, you have all this like life wisdom, but we all need help, because
Mhm.
like I said
Mhm.
earlier, no one prepares you for this point in your life
Nope.
where your children don't want to do the things that you used to do. They have their own friends, they want to go. Like, even when we bought my stepson his truck and he took off in his car, we were bawling. My husband and I were bawling because we're like, oh my God, this is it. He's gone. Like, he's not going to need us for a ride, or he's not going to need us for this. But I mean, they still need you, but not as much, and then eventually they're going to get married and have their own children. So it's so important for you to not only have a healthy relationship with your husband, because now it's just the two of you, but also to have a healthy relationship with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. That's where it all begins. Um, I, I believe that we all need a tribe of support, and it does start with ourselves,
Mhm.
figuring out who we are and why we do the things that we do, and really doing some deep diving on our inner being, and listening. And then beyond that, starting to fill our lives with relationships that support us, or in an area of our life where we want to grow, or maybe our spouse doesn't particularly care for one thing that we are really interested in. We'll find a friend, a platonic friendship to grow in that area with, so you can continue to expand in all areas of your life that interest you, and
Yeah.
not just put all that responsibility on one person.
Yes. Keyword platonic, ladies. Platonic. But so tell me a little bit. Let's go back to your story a little bit. So you're sitting at the edge of your bed and you're just kind of like, what am I supposed to do? You're feeling stuck. And yes, you had that conversation with your older friend who was like, and that was your aha moment. So what were the steps that you took to like really get unstuck?
Well, what I realized in that conversation with Jane was that I let out a little bit of vulnerability in saying that I wasn't okay, and that, are you really okay? Because I'm not okay, you know. And that nobody want that's a scary word, and to
Mhm.
be vulnerable, but that's what unleashed this whole revelation of mine. And I started just doing all kinds of research on connection and loneliness and vulnerability, and that is really why I became a friendship expert and wrote
Mm.
the book. It's called Lady in the Tribe: How to Create Empowering Friendship Circles. And it's really my story plus the stories of other women who've had similar but different journeys, and how we came back from that midlife funk in a big and powerful way to kind of start reaching towards our true legacy. And so anyway, I did the research, and I really became an expert in all this stuff because of tens of thousands of hours, and writing the book, and then a midlife women's coach.
Mhm.
And I run a couple, 3 or 4 retreats a year, Breckenridge in Costa Rica, for just women's empowerment weekends, to bring them in and fill them up again and get them excited about their life again.
Mm. I love that. It's so important too to talk about like how to make friendships because it's easy when you're growing up and you're in school or even working because you're sitting next to a coworker or you're on the playground with another person. But like when you are a mom, it's kind of hard to create these friendships. And I see all these funny TikToks and Instagram reels where it's like, hey, do you want to be like my mom friend? Like nothing creepy, nothing weird, but seriously, it's hard to make friends with like-minded people. You almost have to date women, like not in that way, but like you know what I mean? Like you have to
Yeah.
date each other to figure out like are we like-minded? Do we
Yeah.
like the same topics? Like,
Yeah.
are you going and not just that, but are you going to be a friend that's going to reciprocate the same energy? Because you could also be friends with people who are just takers, takers, takers and never giving. So, what would be some tips that you would give the listeners today on how to make new mom friendships or new female friendships at this day and age?
I love this question because there are really several strategies that I put the people I work with through. But I always want to start off with, first of all, let me talk about the moms, the other middle school moms is the group that I kind of refer to when I talk about this. Because after going through middle school with my children, you spend, years with these same families on the bleachers, at activities, even traveling together sometimes if there's sports involved. And you kind of feel like you have this kind of bond or network of friendships. But when the kids all go their separate ways, guess what happens?
They're
All the
gone.
friendships do too.
Yeah.
And I kind of labeled that kind of friendship the friendlies. And these are friendships of convenience. And it's not like a mean girl thing or anything like that. It's not like there's any malice or bad intent. It's just that it's really we're friendship. We have a friendship because of our kids are friends and we
Yeah.
do things together. So my first tip would be, if you have a friend in that group that you kind of only do things on the bleachers or sports or in the classroom or playground or whatever, and you really kind of want to connect further, you got to take that friendship to another location.
Yeah.
What they say not to do if you're getting kidnapped, don't go to another location, but you
Uh-huh.
must do it with a friendship,
Yeah.
because you have to create your own thing
Mhm.
together to
Yes.
so that relationship will exist beyond where it is now. Because when
Yeah.
kids go apart, so it just happened. It hurt my feelings, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
Paula. I was like, oh, well, what happened? I thought I was all in, and we just never got together again after that, and it was upsetting.
Yeah.
So those are the friendlies, and you want to definitely just pick out a few, one or two, one maybe even is all that makes the list, but one that you're going to take and build a relationship with beyond that setting. And
Yeah.
that goes for work too. If you mostly have, work friendships, if there's someone you particularly vibe with in a good way, take that to another location. Take them,
Yeah.
have lunch, go do something over the weekend
Yes.
together,
You'd
right?
be surprised how many people would say yes. And that's the thing. Like I started moved over here because I left my single area, which was Costa Mesa by the beach, into,
Um,
the suburbs with my husband and my two stepsons. And at first, I really was like really lonely because I'm like, all my
mhm,
friends live over there and I'm like
mhm.
a half hour away. And every time I had to go visit my friends, it was like a half hour there and a half hour back. And I was like, no, I need to make friends in this area. And, I need to like really, really solidify these friendships that I'm friends with at the bleachers. Like I need to like create an environment where they see me outside of the bleachers, outside of just like cheering on, the hockey game or whatever. And so I did, I would invite them to my Halloween party and just them, not the kids, because I wanted them to know that I wanted to be friends with you, not just because your friends, my kids and your kid get along. Like I want to be friends with you. And I started having Friendsgivings and I would start like, inviting them out for cocktails and like, and we did create these friendships that even though, especially if you're in sports, you're only with them for that one season. And
Mhm.
then the next season, you get a whole new set of parents, and maybe some parents stick around. But like, I've loved that I've created these friendships with my hockey moms that like we're no longer on the same teams. We're all on different teams, and our kids are growing up, but we're still friends. And I
Yep.
love that. And I love that, just like I said earlier, recently my husband had a heart attack. And I could text them in that group and they all prayed for my husband. Some of them even came to my house and sat with me. One of them brought me food. And like, that's how you create these friendships, is that you have to be bold enough to say, hey, would you like to grab coffee, and actually follow through, not
Yep.
just say it and put it out in the ether, but like actually follow through and make a date. And, you have to, that's how you create friendships, is like follow through, actually asking. And you'd be surprised how many of them will say, yes, I would love to, I would
Yeah, I'm
love to
glad you
go with
said
you.
that, because that I would just wrap up my advice or my tip with, so make those invitations, and people feel so nervous about that.
I
But you
know.
would be surprised how many people will take you up on it. And here's a little tip to make it not so scary. I think we all at some point think about, okay, if I'm trying to make new friends, I have to be super, enthusiastic, and I have to like be really interesting, and I have to, do all these things. I have to be. But really, instead of showing up to a like somewhere where you might meet someone trying to be interesting, go with the conscious effort to be interested, and making
Mm,
that invitation just by saying, hey, we're both here at the same thing. Why are you here? What brings you here? And then just sit back and listen
yes.
attentively, because people love to be listened to.
Yes.
And it's truly a fast track to friendship, so you don't have to worry about all the things that you're going to say and be interesting. Don't
Oh,
need to.
that is such great advice, because I can't even tell you how many events I go to and no one asks me one thing about me,
Right.
because people aren't interested. They just want to talk, talk, talk. And sometimes you have to understand, some people just have really nervous energy, and
Yeah, they're nervous.
they're nervous, just as nervous as you are. And so they're
Yeah.
just like trying to speak to try to fill in the silence gaps. But if you could just sit back and listen, ask questions, really, like, pretend you're on a
Mhm.
podcast and just really ask them, like, what's the deal, and be interested in them. Because sometimes, most moms, especially if they're full-time moms and they have little kiddos,
Mhm.
they don't really get a chance to have these adult conversations. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
really
So
allow
people
them.
do speak so much because they, not only is it nervous energy, and that's absolutely true, but it's also they're trying to sell themselves.
Yes.
Why do you want to be my friend? Why you should like me? Da, da, da. So you kind of turn that around and use that. I don't mean that in a malicious way anyway, but just as a comfort level. If you would just go in saying, I'm interviewing for my next friend.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're interviewing someone? You
You
ask
want to get to
questions
know them,
and
right?
you let them talk, and it's a win-win.
Yes, it is a win-win. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. So, as we wrap up this episode, what would be your nugget of wisdom that you would leave the women who are listening today?
Well, I think my biggest nugget right now after this conversation would be that if you are kind of feeling in this, funky space, so transition, maybe the kids are moving out, maybe the parents are moving in, maybe your job, you're going back to the workforce, or maybe you're even like getting a divorce. All these things happen to us in
Mhm.
midlife. And this is the time that you really, that is not selfish for self-care. It's important. It's a gift you can give to everyone around you to become whole again.
Mm,
And if you're feeling that unease and uncertainty about what's next for you, it's time. It's overdue for some. Maybe it's coaching, maybe it's just doing your own research, maybe it's reading more books, maybe it's getting involved in some activities that you kind of let go of over the years, kind of re-engage.
yes.
Start filling that time up that you're not carpooling anymore with something for yourself.
Yes, I love it. And like her and I were both coaches. You don't have to hire one ourselves. You could go and do your own research, or you could save your time. Because I
Right?
always think to myself, like, if I did get a coach at that time, but I had been doing my research of self-help even before then, working on my trauma, which is a whole nother thing. But like, I spent years
I know.
reading books and watching podcasts and using
Same.
YouTube and everything. Skip that time and save
Yes.
yourself the time and just get yourself a coach. I love that you said earlier, we've always had mentors and coaches,
Yeah.
whether it
Yeah.
was your mom, your parents, your sisters, your teachers, your pastor, whatever, your boss. Like, you can have a midlife coach. You could have
Yeah.
somebody that can, and honestly, it really is so important to have someone to be able to bounce ideas off of. That's,
Yeah.
that's like really wanting you to move forward. So thank you again for being on the podcast. I truly appreciate your time. And you guys listen for the next episode. Make sure to hit subscribe, share this episode for any mom that must listen to this or any friend that you think needs this episode. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.